Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a massive financial crossroads that a lot of folks hit, but very few talk about. We're talking about navigating a home sale and taking mandatory retirement withdrawals in the exact same year. If you're planning a move in your golden years, or, just looking ahead to protect that nest egg you've worked so hard for, understanding how these two events overlap is absolutely crucial. So let's kick things off with the big question. What actually happens when your home sale and your retirement withdrawals land in the same calendar year? It's honestly incredibly common for these two things to overlap, but usually people plan for them completely separately. And hey, our goal today is definitely not to stress you out with some heavy, boring financial lecture. Instead, we're just going to have a straightforward chat about how these two pieces of your financial puzzle fit together. Understanding this connection early, it can absolutely save you from a nasty surprise come tax season. Okay, first things first, let's do a super quick refresher on the RMD, or Required Minimum Distribution. Basically, the IRS mandates that you make an annual withdrawal from certain tax-deferred retirement accounts. We're talking about your traditional IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, or your standard workplace plans. Now, if you have a Roth IRA, you get a pass here. Those don't have an RMD requirement for the original owner during their lifetime. But for traditional accounts, the IRS generally says you have to start taking these taxable withdrawals at age 73. You can for sure take out more than the minimum, but you absolutely cannot take out less. And the big takeaway here, every single dollar of that minimum distribution counts as taxable income for that year. Now, here is a timeline trap that catches so many people off guard. The trigger age is 73, right? And your very first RMD deadline falls on April 1st of the year after you turn 73. But here is the catch. Every single annual RMD after that one must come out by December 31st of that same year. So think about what that means. If you delay your very first RMD until April 1st, you are legally forced to take your second one by December 31st. You're basically cramming two mandatory taxable withdrawals into a single calendar year. And if you happen to be selling a house in that exact same 12-month window, you are suddenly stacking a massive amount of income all at once. So, how do they actually come up with this number? Well, research from Charles Schwab points out that the calculation is actually pretty straightforward, but it does reset fresh every single year. You just take your account balance as of December 31st of the previous year, and you divide it by an IRS distribution period that's based on your age. So naturally, a bigger balance means a bigger required withdrawal. And listen, you definitely do not want to ignore this math. FINRA issues a really stern warning about this. Missing an RMD deadline triggers a huge excise tax penalty on the exact amount you were supposed to withdraw but didn't. It's not just a slap on the wrist. Now, they do note the penalty can drop if you correct the mistake within 2 years, but it's still a massive headache you want to avoid. All right, so how does all this connect back to selling your house? We know what an RMD is, we know when it's due, and we know it's taxable. But what does it have to do with real estate? It's super easy to think of your retirement accounts and your home as existing in two totally separate universes, right? Because they're completely different types of assets. But in the eyes of the IRS, your RMD and your home sale are just two streams feeding into the exact same river, and that river is your annual tax return. Let's compare the two. In a typical tax year, your taxable income is basically your standard income, so things like Social Security or a pension, plus that new required minimum distribution. That's your baseline. Simple enough. But in a home sale year, you've got your standard income, plus your RMD, plus the proceeds and potential capital gains from selling your house. Stacking all these events together creates a sudden and honestly often completely unexpected spike in your total taxable income. It just pushes everything so much higher than either event would on its own. Let's ground this with a really common real-world scenario. Imagine a 74-year-old own homeowner. Depending on their retirement balances, their RMD alone might easily add $20,000 to $30,000 of ordinary taxable income to their year. Now, let's say they decide to sell the family home. Even if their gain on the sale falls perfectly under the Section 121 exclusion, which means the gain itself is largely protected from capital gains tax, that $20,000 to $30,000 RMD is still sitting right there next to it on the tax return. The home sale doesn't magically become taxable, but the RMD income fundamentally shifts what that entire tax year looks like. And this brings us to a really crucial point, the hidden ripple effects. Insights from Fidelity show us exactly why this timing deserves a serious, proactive conversation. When you stack that RMD income on top of a home sale year, it does way more than just bump up your tax bracket. It can actually increase the percentage of your Social Security benefits that are subject to taxes. Plus, it can trigger something called IRMA, the income-related monthly adjustment amount. Basically, that's an income-based surcharge that raises the cost of your Medicare premiums for the following year. So a financial decision you make this year about your house and your IRA will literally change what you pay for healthcare next year. Crazy, right? Now, a quick but super important side note for those of you in specific areas, like Illinois, for example. A lot of homeowners stress out that a massive income spike from selling a home and taking an RMD will instantly disqualify them from their property tax exemptions. Well, there's some reassuring news here. The source material points out that senior property tax exemptions usually key off of your age and residency, not your income level. So an income jump won't typically strip away those specific exemptions. But honestly, it just proves why looking at your full, holistic financial picture is so incredibly critical. You really need to know what is tied to your income and what isn't. Okay, the good news is you have options. Let's walk through some actionable strategies you can explore with your advisors to manage this overlap. First, consider taking your RMD earlier in the year, well before you ever close on a home. That gives you a crystal clear picture of your total income before finalizing any real estate dates. Second, if you love giving back and you're over 70 and a half, look into a qualified charitable distribution, or QCD. You can send your RMD funds directly to a charity, which satisfies the requirement without adding a single dime to your taxable income. And third, use extreme caution with same-year Roth conversions. Paying taxes now to convert funds to a tax-free Roth is often a great long-term strategy, but doing it in the exact same year you sell a house and take an RMD, that usually just adds massive tax complexity instead of solving anything. To make this as easy as possible for you, here are the 3 exact numbers you need to gather before you ever set a closing date on your home. First, get your approximate RMD amount for the year. Second, your expected home gain after any Section 121 exclusions. And third, your other baseline income, like Social Security and pensions. Gather those up and bring them to a qualified CPA or tax advisor. Treating the home sale and the RMD as 2 totally separate conversations is exactly where people slip up. Bringing these 3 figures to one meeting gives your tax pro the full picture they need to plan around both events at the same time. And as a quick reminder, the sources note this explainer is for educational purposes, so definitely consult a qualified professional about your specific situation. I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on today. Are your retirement accounts and your home sale having a conversation yet? Because if they aren't, they absolutely need to be. Just a little bit of planning at the start of the year can completely prevent a nasty tax surprise that you'd only spot when filing your return the next spring. I highly encourage you to seek out professional guidance early on. And hey, if you're looking to feel a bit more confident in your next steps, warmly consider exploring the free resource library mentioned in our sources. It is packed with amazing guides on downsizing, aging in place, and senior living options. Also, be sure to check out the Homeowners 50+ page to really understand all your later life housing choices. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and happy planning.